By its very nature, sporting competition tests the human body to the limit. Our bodies have to perform an amazing variety of functions, like turning, twisting, thrusting, and absorbing impacts. In particular, elite athletes often dazzle us with astonishing feats of physical skill, dexterity, and endurance. And we're only seeing the outside layer of the human body. Underneath the skin, there are bones, muscles, tendons, ligaments, organs, and all the other elements of our internal structure. These elements somehow manage to combine their functions at the right time and in the right way to produce, for example, the contortions required for a pole vault. On the inside, there really isn't that much difference between elite athletes and the rest of us, so don't think that your own sporting efforts aren't also impressive. Whether it's you or David Beckham kicking a goal, the same sorts of anatomical functions are involved. So how does it all happen? In this program, we're going to examine how our anatomy allows us to be physically active. To assist our understanding, we'll split the topic into 4 body systems: the skeletal system, the muscular system, the respiratory system, and the circulatory system. To meet the demands of sport, a very strong basic structure is needed. But this structure must also be capable of a vast range of movements. This combination is provided by the skeleton. The skeleton has 5 main functions in the human body. It provides a rigid framework for body shape and support for soft tissues. Without the skeleton, the body would collapse under the influence of gravity. Bones surround and protect the internal organs. For example, the ribs form the chest cavity to protect the heart and lungs. The bones help produce movement by providing attachment for tendons and muscles. For example, the heel bone provides attachment for the Achilles tendon. Bones store and release minerals like calcium and phosphorus. Excess minerals from our food are stored in the bones and then released when needed. Finally, bones produce blood cells. The spongy red bone marrow inside the bones of the human body produces millions of blood cells every second. A newborn baby has 305 bones, but as we age, many of these bones fuse in order to obtain maximum strength. By age 25, the average adult skeleton has 206 bones. These bones are harder and stronger than a young child's, especially amongst people who exercise regularly. The skeleton can be divided into 2 main parts: the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton refers to the bones that are grouped along an imaginary line that runs down the body's axis. These are the skull, sternum, rib cage, and vertebral column. The vertebral column is made up of 33 individual vertebrae, which are separated by discs of cartilage. The flexibility this provides is very important for athletes. The appendicular skeleton refers to the appendages that are attached to the axial skeleton. These are the shoulder girdle, which is connected to our arms, and the pelvic girdle, which is connected to our legs. The long bones of the arms, the humerus, radius, and ulna, and the legs, the femur, tibia, and fibula, act as levers to produce a wide range of rapid, large, and powerful movements. At the extremities of the limbs are the short bones of the hands and feet. Of the 60 bones that make up the arms, 54 are in the hands. The small size of these bones means the hand is extremely flexible, which allows finer sporting movements to be performed. Short bones also help the hands and feet to absorb heavy impacts. The skeleton has three major types of joint: fibrous, immovable joints such as between the sacrum and the pelvic girdle; cartilaginous, partially movable joints such as between the ribs and the sternum; and synovial, freely movable joints found throughout the body. There are 6 types of synovial joint: saddle, hinge, pivot, ovoid, ball and socket, and gliding. All are obviously important for athletes, but the ball and socket joint and the hinge joint are particularly crucial. The arms and legs are attached to the shoulder and pelvic girdles by ball and socket joints. In the shoulder joint, the ball of the humerus joins with a socket formed by the scapula. In the hip joint, a ball at the head of the femur fits into a socket in the pelvis. In both joints, the ball is surrounded by a strong, flexible sheath of ligament which holds the bones securely in place. Ball and socket joints allow for a wide range of movements, including forward, back, side, and rotation. These movements have many applications in sport. Hinge joints are completely different. They occur at the elbows and knees and allow movement in one plane only, not side to side. In the elbow, the trochlea of the humerus joins with the ulna. This provides a pivot point for the leverage systems of the limb and allows the application of maximum force in one specific direction. There are over 600 muscles in the human body, and they have 3 main functions: the production of heat, maintaining a balanced posture, and, most importantly for athletes, movement. There are many muscles in the human body, such as the cardiac muscle, that can be described as involuntary, meaning they contract outside of our conscious control. However, the majority of the muscles in the human body are classified as voluntary because we control them. These are the skeletal muscles that attach to bones and move the skeleton. While in combination muscles can produce complex movements, each individual muscle is only capable of 2 things: contraction and relaxation. To understand muscular contraction, we'll need to examine the specialized cell structure of muscles. A muscle consists of bundles of muscle fibers, and these fibers are made up of smaller units called myofibrils. A myofibril is a series of filaments joined end to end. When stimulated, the filament slides into itself, shortening the length. When thousands of filaments shorten simultaneously, they produce the powerful contraction of the muscle. When the stimulus is removed, the filament slides out again to its original length, relaxing the muscle. The stimulus to contract is transmitted from the brain to the muscle by the nervous system in the form of an electrical impulse. These impulses are sent by nerve cells called motor neurons. One motor neuron doesn't stimulate the whole muscle, but only a number of fibers within that muscle. The motor neuron and the fibers it stimulates is called a motor unit. The smaller muscles of the body, like those in the eyes or the fingers, contain relatively few motor units, each controlling a small number of muscle fibers. This allows delicate and accurate movements to be made. The larger muscles, like the hamstrings, contain many motor units, each controlling a large number of muscle fibers. If the force required from a muscle is small, only a few individual motor units are stimulated. This allows the other motor units to be held in reserve. If a powerful effort is needed, all the available motor units will be stimulated simultaneously. But this powerful contraction can only be held for a short time because the immediately available energy supplies will become exhausted. Skeletal muscles are made up of fast twitch fibers and slow twitch fibers. Fast twitch fibers contract very rapidly and are therefore useful for sports requiring sudden, explosive movements. Slow twitch fibers contract more slowly but for a longer period and are therefore useful for sports requiring endurance. Each individual has a genetically determined ratio of fast twitch and slow twitch fibers, and this ratio cannot be significantly changed by training. The average person has a ratio of about 40% fast twitch fibers to 60% slow twitch fibers, but there are many exceptions. For example, an elite sprinter may have a ratio of almost 80% fast twitch to 20% slow twitch fibers, whereas an elite marathon runner may have the reverse, 20% fast twitch to 80% slow twitch fibers. However, most sports require a more even combination of fast and slow twitch fibers. The force of muscular contraction is transmitted to the bones by tendons. Muscle fibers taper into a tendon, which is very strong and will stretch by about 5%. This slight stretching acts as a shock absorber, protecting the muscles and bones against impacts or other excessive forces. For movement to occur, a muscle must cross a joint between two bones and be attached to these two bones. The point at which the muscle is attached to the moving bone is called the insertion of the muscle, and the point at which the muscle is attached to the non-moving bone is known as the origin of the muscle. When the muscles of a limb contract, they pull on the skeletal bones, which are arranged as a hinged system of levers, and the limb moves. Flexion is the movement that describes the angle of the joint being decreased, such as bending movements. Extension is the movement that describes the angle of the joint being increased, such as straightening movements. Muscles can only exert a pulling force through contraction. Muscles cannot push. Once flexed, a limb would remain flexed unless an opposing force was applied. The force that produces the straightening or extension of the limb is supplied by another muscle pulling on the other side of the bone through a separate leverage system. The muscle that directly causes movement through contraction is called the agonist. In this example of the flexion of the arm, the agonist is the biceps, which shortens. In order for arm flexion to occur, the triceps muscle must lengthen. This muscle is called the antagonist because its action is opposite to the agonist. When the arm is extended, the roles are reversed. The triceps is the agonist and shortens. The biceps is the antagonist and lengthens. Precise control of the range and speed of movement is achieved by a constantly adjusted balance between the pull exerted by an agonist and the opposing force of the antagonist. This occurs throughout the body during physical activity. We've already mentioned flexion and extension, but there are many other types of movement. Of particular relevance to athletes are abduction, adduction, and rotation. Abduction is the movement of a body part away from the midline of the body. Adduction is movement of a body part towards the midline of the body. Rotation is when a body part is moved either outwards, lateral rotation, or inwards, medial rotation, around its long axis. The functions and movements of our muscles during physical activity are monitored and controlled by the nervous system. In simple terms, the nervous system can be thought of as a central computer, the brain, connected to all parts of the body by wiring. Information is gathered both inside and on the surface of the body by specialized sensor nerves. This information is transmitted as electrical impulses to the brain, and decisions, most of them unconscious, are made. The appropriate commands are then transmitted back to the various body systems through the spinal cord. This is why a common cause of permanent paralysis of the limbs is damage to the spinal cord. Each time we breathe, approximately 9 litres of air moves in and out of our lungs. Oxygen is extracted from this air, absorbed into the bloodstream, and pumped throughout the body. Oxygen is an essential ingredient in the production of energy for body movement. When we breathe in, the diaphragm, which is an involuntary muscle, contracts and moves downwards, making the chest cavity larger. This lowers the air pressure inside the lungs, and so air is naturally drawn in. This is called inspiration. When we breathe out, the diaphragm relaxes and the chest cavity returns to its resting size. The air pressure inside the lungs rises, and so the air is forced out. This is called expiration. Air enters our lungs via the trachea, which divides into 2 bronchi. These bronchi branch into bronchial tubes, which then branch into smaller bronchioles. The air passes through these bronchioles, which are connected to alveoli or air sacs. It's in the alveoli that oxygen is extracted from the air and passes into the bloodstream. There are millions of alveoli in our lungs, and they collectively have a very large surface area. In fact, the internal surface area of a pair of lungs can be as much as 80 square metres, or about half the size of a tennis court. The alveoli are surrounded by tiny blood vessels, or capillaries. The walls of the capillaries are very thin, and some of the oxygen in the lung diffuses through the walls into the bloodstream. The oxygen combines with hemoglobin in the red blood cells to form oxyhemoglobin. The oxygen is then transported to the muscles and used as an energy source. The production of energy produces carbon dioxide as a waste product. Carbon dioxide is disposed of by essentially the reverse of the process that distributes oxygen throughout the body. The bloodstream transports carbon dioxide back to the alveoli. The carbon dioxide then passes into the lungs and is expired. The process of the transport of oxygen into the blood and the removal of carbon dioxide is called respiration. Respiration rate is the amount of times we breathe per minute, 12 to 18 times for the average resting adult. During physical activity, our bodies require more oxygen and produce more carbon dioxide, which needs to be removed. As a result, our respiration rate can increase to as much as 35 times per minute. The circulatory system, also known as the cardiovascular system, is made up of the heart, blood vessels and blood. The main function of the circulatory system is to provide an internal transport and distribution network. This transports nutrients to the various body systems and carries away waste products to the specialized organs which dispose of them. The human body has approximately 4 to 5 litres of blood, made up of 45% blood cells and 55% blood plasma. Blood cells include white blood cells, platelets, and red blood cells. White blood cells fight infection, and platelets help form blood clots. Blood plasma is 90% water and performs a number of functions, including assisting the removal of waste products. The supply of nutrients to the muscles is essential for athletic performance. Oxygen is transported to the muscles in the form of oxyhemoglobin. Arteries carry blood away from the heart, and veins carry blood back to the heart. The largest blood vessels are close to the heart, while the smallest are near the outer surfaces of the body. It takes 20 to 30 seconds for the same portion of blood to complete a full circulation from foot to foot, and this is due to the efforts of the heart. The heart is a muscular organ about the size of a clenched fist. The heart is an involuntary muscle which contracts and relaxes about 60 to 80 times per minute at rest. Each contraction causes a pressure wave that travels along the arteries at close to 7 meters per second. The right side of the heart receives deoxygenated blood via the veins that contains waste products like carbon dioxide. The heart pumps this blood into the lungs, where carbon dioxide is released and oxygen absorbed. The oxygenated blood then returns to the left side of the heart, which pumps it through the arteries to muscles and tissue in the body. The heart also has the ability to respond very rapidly to demands for increased blood flow. During exercise, the number of beats of the heart per minute can be from 120 to over 200. Since the heart is made of muscle, its performance can be improved by training, just like any part of the muscular system. Exercise and training greatly increases the overall efficiency of the circulatory system. While the systems we've described in this program are the same for all athletes, it's also true that different people have different body shapes. Some body shapes appear to be more suited to particular sports than others. For example, shot putters and discus throwers tend to have a larger build. Sprinters and javelin throwers tend to have a more muscular build. And distance runners and high jumpers tend to have a slim build. Each individual has a particular body shape which is genetically inherited and cannot be modified to any great degree. Athletes can analyse their own particular combination of body characteristics and take these into account when thinking about concentrating on a specific sport. However, it's important to remember that there are lots of exceptions and variations, and that proper technique and motivation are probably more important than anatomical characteristics.